Thank you, Glendy, for giving me this opportunity to speak on living with cancer. And I wanted to say something about Glendy. I'm just amazed at how she can walk around with no notes and give these sermons. You know, I've gone over my sermon here, my message tonight, I've gone over it 80 times, and I still have to have notes. So you're amazing, Glendy. Anyway, my story is really not unique by any means. 13 million people are living with cancer today. Every day in the United States, 2,000 people are diagnosed with cancer. My type of cancer is called non-hodgkin's lymphoma. Has anyone heard of that? Okay, good. Okay, you know what it is. Tumors grow in the lymph glands, and you have over 300 lymph glands in your body. They're mostly in the, from the neck and the trunk. There's 30 different types of lymphoma. Some are very rare, and there's a few that are very common. My type of lymphoma is non-curable, but it's treatable. So there's two avenues there. I guess the basis of my story is that 50% of all cancer patients, when they're initially diagnosed, they struggle with anxiety or depression or both. Both of those are kind of related. I was diagnosed with lymphoma in 2002. At that time, my wife Cindy and I were living near Des Moines, Iowa, where we both worked. We were both teachers. We're both from Minnesota, but we moved back here when we retired in 2006. And that brings up a little story. When I retired, as I was approaching retirement, my colleagues, when they retired, most of them moved to Missouri, Arkansas, or Texas, or someplace where it was warmer. And, they told me, let me get this straight. You're moving north where it's colder and there's more snow? I said, yeah, I like to go ice fishing. They looked at me like there was something wrong with me. But, I got to tell you something else. Where's Jack? My friend Jack Mundy. Lately, I've been putting pictures of our spring snowstorms on Facebook, and that's been giving him nightmares. I kind of like to annoy Jack doing that. Yeah. Anyway, back to lymphoma. I was diagnosed in 2002 at the age of 52, and when I was diagnosed in Des Moines, my oncologist told me that you can expect to live about 5 years. Okay, after hearing that, I went into a severe state of anxiety. I couldn't do anything except, think about dying and leaving my family behind, leaving my friends and relatives behind. And I went through 3 phases, I think, that a lot of cancer patients go through when they're initially diagnosed. First was, what did I deserve? What did I do to deserve this? I thought I was in good health. Why me? And then second, I went through this phase for a couple of weeks. What did I do to get cancer? Okay, I used to teach biology, and I had to help students dissect fetal pigs, and back in the day, those were embalmed with formaldehyde. And we dissected them with bare hands and no mask. Today, they don't use formaldehyde anymore for dissection specimens in biology. It's a suspected carcinogen. Anyway, I blamed it on formaldehyde. And then I thought, maybe I smoked too many cigars when I went on those fishing trips up in northern Minnesota. Whatever. Anyway, later I learned that lymphomas are genetic, or at least they have a genetic component, and they don't really, beyond that, they really don't know what causes it. And the third phase I went through for a few weeks was I don't want to die yet. I'll never get to retire. I'll never get to see any grandchildren. The Grim Reaper had come to take me away. In short, I was just beating myself up, so to speak. First and foremost, I knew I had to get a handle on this anxiety problem. And I've always had faith in God and the church, so I turned to God and prayed to help me get through this personal crisis of anxiety. First thing I did, I called my old pastor, Wally Pratt, who was a minister in Dassel, Minnesota. That's west of Minneapolis. He was the pastor there for many years at the Covenant Church in Dassel. And I called him up from Iowa, and we talked for a long time, and he gave me this one Bible verse that I've long since put to memory, and maybe you know it. It's Jeremiah 29:11. And here it is. For I know the plans I have for you, plans for good and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Just repeating that verse gave me kind of a sense of calmness. And also, I reminded myself about a sermon that I heard on TV years ago by the evangelist Robert Schuller. I'm sure many of you know him. The corollary is that God is our light and salvation. He's a light, a guiding force through the dark times. And this is what Robert Schuller, he gave this little story in his sermon that I always remember. And this is how it goes. When a shadow falls across your path, the shadow is proof that there's a light. For there cannot be a shadow without a light. And God is that light. I like that story. That gave me a sense of hope. It kind of matches our theme for these talks we've been having, living in the shadows. So my advice, if you're diagnosed with cancer or you know someone that's been diagnosed with cancer, be your own advocate. You might think that this is out of your control, and that's part of the problem with anxiety. It's out of control. You think it's out of control, but that's not always the case. There are certain things you can do. This is what I recommend, having gone through this. Talk to your pastor, first of all. See a counselor. Many hospitals that have oncology departments have cancer counselors. And I was fortunate in Des Moines, Iowa, at Mercy Hospital, they had a cancer counselor that I visited with many times. And that was really helpful. And this was back in 2002. Third, learn about your cancer and the treatment options. Go online. But one thing I caution you, don't dwell too much on the statistics. They can be scary. Everyone's cancer issue is different. I have a good friend, Mike Line. He's on our prayer chain right here. And he was diagnosed with brain cancer about 2 months ago, And that's kind of scary. But he's going through treatment and he's doing very well, and the chemo is working. It's shrinking that tumor in the brain. Fourth, see your family doctor if necessary for anti-anxiety or anti-depression medicine. Fifth, work out, exercise, go out in nature. That has a positive effect on the brain. Next, volunteer. That helps take the focus off yourself. Do something to help someone else. Next, look to your immediate support base, your family. Cindy and my sister Wendy were so helpful and encouraging to me. We had many long discussions about cancer and life in general, and my daughter Sarah and sons Aaron and Nathan were also very supportive during the darkest hours. And lastly, ask God to help you through the dark times. Using those tools, I got through the anxiety after about 3 months where I could deal with the lymphoma issue. Well, back to 2002. I was diagnosed in 2002 and given 5 years to live. I'm now on year 12. I've been through chemotherapy 5 times. Each chemotherapy session lasts about 4 months with about 6 infusions. And each time the chemo has wiped out the cancer, but then the pattern with my kind of lymphoma, it comes back in about 2 years. So basically in the form of enlarged lymph nodes. One time when the lymphoma came back, it got in my spleen. Spleen is like a giant lymph node itself. And my spleen was enlarged about 10 times. It was pressing against my stomach and diaphragm. I couldn't eat and I could hardly breathe. But they got me on chemo right away, and after a couple infusions, it just shrunk back to normal size. Now, I thought it was the end of the line, but my oncologist at the University of Minnesota said, no, we can take care of this, and he did. So the last time I had chemo was 2.5 years ago, so I just had a checkup and everything looks good, but eventually it will come back. I still have anxiety, don't get me wrong, but it's more of a normal response. Every time I have my quarterly checkup and I have a scan once a year, it's kind of the normal response, which is okay. So I'll end on a positive note. The average lifespan for my type of lymphoma is now 10 to 12 years. And new treatments are coming out for cancer. Maybe you've heard this. Back in the day, it took so long for the FDA to approve something, but now the new treatments are coming out 10 times faster than 10 years ago. And new medications really reduce the side effects like nausea. And some of the new treatments maybe you've heard are called targeted therapy. They hit the cancer cells, but not other cells in the body, so the side effects are almost nil. That's not to say living with lymphoma has been easy. I've got permanently low blood counts, so I'm subject to fatigue and infections. I got to watch that. On the other hand, in many ways, living with cancer has had a really profound effect on me. I remind myself every day that every day is a good day, and I don't sweat the small stuff. Life can be good even with cancer. And oh, by the way, Cindy and I, yes, we are retired, and we now have 3 grandchildren. So, thank you and amen.